Little luxuries are all around us. I mean, who doesn't love the good things in life? But just because I enjoy a little luxury doesn't mean that I can always afford it. Until I discovered Quince. Quince is my go-to for all essentials at an affordable price. Items like organic cotton sweaters, 14 karat gold jewelry, washable silk tops and dresses are all at a price within reach. And the best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. And they're all made with premium fabrics and finishes. I live in athleisure, and my navy blue slim fit jacket from Quince has become one of my favorite pieces to both run in and just kind of hang out in. It's warm on those chillier spring days, and it's sweat wicking, which is perfect to work out in. So give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/8020 for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/8020 to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/8020.
This Friday, from Disney, the musical movie event of the year arrives in theaters.
My name is Snow White.
Flawless. Exquisite.
Get tickets now.
Waiting on a wind.
Snow White will have you on your feet
I think that's a wonderful idea.
and cheering for more.
I was thinking the same thing.
Experience the magical story.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Snow White.
Disney's Snow White, only in theaters Friday. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets on sale now.
And I had absolutely zero frame of reference for how things might potentially be okay again. I don't really remember my thought process from like sitting in that hospital bed and all this was happening. I think that it was just like a lot was going on. But I do remember how painful it was, not just physically, because obviously like when you have a broken vertebrae, like that hurts. That's not a fun experience at all. I just remember the pain of like not understanding what was happening or why this was happening. I remember that hurt a lot more than the injury ever did. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to or back to the show. Thank you so much for clicking on today's episode. My name is Lily. I'm your host. And we've got a pretty big one. A big one today. We're in week 2 of the surf series, which means this is actually the 3rd episode of the surf series, which even I'm confusing myself these days. But if you are following along in the surf guidebook, which you can find linked in the show notes, we are on week 2, which is page 6. And this week is all about understanding. Quick little backpedal if you're just jumping in the middle of the series. Surf is a series that we started a couple weeks back. SURF stands for Stop, Understand, Relationships, and Faith. And it's so funny because I started this series, made the guidebook, kind of wrote a little bit of the episode content, and it's so interesting to see how my life kind of just has weaved its way into like the perfect circumstances to align with the themes for these weeks. And so this week we have understand, and this episode is kind of going to take more of an approach from like when you don't understand something or when you don't understand why something's happening. Whereas when I wrote the guidebook and the content, it was kind of more from like, how do we learn, kind of from more of like a toolkit type approach. But I think this is going to resonate more than my original idea. So if you're following along in the guidebook, don't disregard like the 1, 2, and 3 that we have at the top. We'll get into that in a little bit. But before we do, one quick announcement. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, you totally should. There's a link in the show notes. I'm sending out some good stuff these days. If you don't have the surf guidebook, you definitely should grab that. I send out a Tuesday check-in every single week. And that kind of just like goes in tandem with the series and helps you to just kind of like dive deeper into the topics that we talk about every single week. So if you're not involved, I encourage you to get involved because we've got some good stuff going on. But with that administrative announcement finished, I'm just going to kind of dive in. I've got some notes here. Like I said, I wrote the episode content, but I feel like I just got to speak from the heart. This is one that's probably going to be incredibly vulnerable, and I don't intend it to be like, I'm over here trying to be like a negative Nancy or trying to be like trying to complain. I don't know. I keep this quote keeps kind of bouncing around in my head, and my good friend and fellow podcaster, her name's Madison Ciccone. She hosts the podcast Wicked Fearless. She always says on her show, what's personal is universal. And I've kind of been carrying that with me as I've been procrastinating and also kind of terrified to record this episode today, because I just feel like I'm not in the place that I wish I was. Like I kind of feel like I have to have it figured out, and then I can come on the mic and share what I'm going through. But this is one where I'm just showing up because what's personal is universal, as Madison says. So I'm in the midst of a big adjustment, and it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, Monday, I'm feeling so good, feeling refreshed. I feel like I have my head on straight. I found my footing. I've got it. And then by Tuesday, like everything is falling to pieces. And I feel like I don't even have, like, I feel like I can't even say that things aren't okay, because I don't really have it that bad. Like, I don't have circumstances where, like, I mean, I'm healthy, I'm young. I feel like, you know, to a degree, I definitely have a cool opportunity ahead of me because I have a bit of a clean slate. Like, I don't have it bad. However, I just don't understand. Let me elaborate. I've always struggled with my own mind and allowing myself to fall into patterns of sadness and just thoughts that nobody wants to have. And along with that comes anxiety and panic and just like uncontrollable crying. And I'm just like, I thought I was over this. Like, I thought I was good. I just don't get it. I just don't understand. And half of that's like, I don't understand why I feel the way that I do, but I also don't understand why I'm in the situation that I am, if that kind of makes sense. And even though it's not necessarily a bad situation, I don't have like, I feel like I have no right to complain, except for the fact that I just don't know what the heck I'm doing with my life. I've got a million decisions in front of me that I could possibly make. It's almost like analysis paralysis, but I also just don't understand what the next thing is, but I also don't understand what the present thing is because I can't get a hold of my emotions. So there's kind of this crazy, weird tension going on in my brain, and there are a million things competing for my attention, and I don't understand where to put my main focus. I don't understand why specific things are happening, and I don't understand like how to kind of tackle this problem, because just plain and simple, I just don't understand. And so I think right now there might be a bit of a disconnect in my understanding, and I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but you can only really connect the dots looking back, and that's the tough thing, right? I was in the shower today and I was reminded of a situation about 10 years ago. It actually was 10 years ago. I don't know to the date, but it was March of 2015. Was it 2015? Yeah, it was 2015. So gosh, okay, it was 10 years ago. I was a freshman in high school and I was really depressed. Like, I was really, really, really in a bad spot, and I was sick. I think I had probably a cold or whatever. I had gone to the doctor earlier that day, and I think I got some sort of medicine, but also I was just like napping and just not feeling well. Like, you know, when you're sick, maybe it was strep, whatever. I just didn't feel good. And I took a nap. And the afternoon, so I napped through the afternoon, and then I woke up and I guess my fever had broke at that point. So I was all sweaty and I was like, okay, I'm going to go take a shower. So got right up from my bed and then went and hopped in the shower. Sometime shortly after getting in the shower, maybe it was the water was too hot or just something happened. They still haven't figured out what happened, and it hasn't happened since. So I guess that's a good thing. I guess it was like hopefully a one-time thing, but I passed out in the shower, and on the way down, I hit my head on the faucet and I ended up breaking my C5 vertebrae in my neck. My sister, she was in the room, my older sister, Marley, she was in the room adjacent to the bathroom, because like, you don't care about the logistics of my house, but there was like one bedroom that had the bathroom door attached, and then there was another door that led to the hallway. So Marley was in the room next to the bathroom with the door attached. And so she obviously heard me fall, like when someone hits the floor, like it makes a loud noise. And so she came in and was like, oh my goodness, called for my parents, called for help, whatever. Went to the hospital and they did tests, CT, MRI, all the things. And I was sitting there in the hospital bed and they came in with this blue and green neck brace and told me that I broke a vertebrae in my neck, told me that I'd probably need more scans and stuff to make sure that there was no nerve damage, told me like basically you're putting this thing on until further notice, you're not going to move your neck. And I don't really remember my thought process from like sitting in that hospital bed and all this was happening. I think that it was just like a lot was going on. I probably didn't understand it at the time. But I do remember how painful it was, not just physically, because obviously like when you have a broken vertebrae, like that hurts. That's not a fun experience at all. I just remember the pain of like not understanding what was happening or why this was happening. I remember that hurt a lot more than the injury ever did. And there's like a slew of other things that kind of came with it. Like socially, when you're 15, all you care about is what are other people going to think of me. And so obviously when I could go back to school like the following week, like I walked in and people were like, what happened to this girl? Like, this is crazy. I remember I just cut my hair too, like the weekend prior. And so everyone was thinking that I had to get my hair cut because of my neck. And it was just this awful thing. And so anyway, I bring this up because it's like the 10-year anniversary of this happening. And it's wild because at the time, I really thought that the world was ending because like that was the only thing that was going on in my life. And I couldn't see past how life could get any better in that moment. And I had absolutely zero frame of reference for how things might potentially be okay again. And one of the cool things about getting older is that you do have that frame of reference. Like now, 10 years later, I can look back and be like, okay, well, I got through that time, so I can definitely get through whatever emotional struggles I'm going through right now. Like, this isn't the end of the world just because I'm going through a transition. But it doesn't really maybe that does make it easier. Because like you do have that frame of reference. You do understand to a degree that like things will get better. But it also like doesn't make it hurt less. It hurts in different ways. And there's different pain points. I think ultimately like the way you view the world right now in this moment are all based on your past experiences and your present reality.
Hey friends, I'm Annie F. Downs, author, speaker, podcaster, and part of the That Sounds Fun network. And I'm a big fan of seeing God move in our everyday lives. Can we talk for a second about what it really means to be a person of faith? It's waking up every day and choosing to trust Him, even when life feels uncertain. It's standing firm in truth, walking in grace, and knowing that God is always with us. But I know staying rooted in faith is not always easy. At least it isn't for me. And that's why I love Glorify, the #1 Christian devotional app designed to help you start, grow, and strengthen your relationship with God every single day. One of the things I love about Glorify is the amount of options available to me through the app every day. Not only does it help me kick off my time with God with their daily devotional, but there's a song of the day to listen to and a community of other users available to engage with. It's really cool. With Glorify, you can begin your morning in scripture, reflect with the daily devotional, and end the day with the daily walk with God, this immersive experience that quiets your heart and refocuses your spirit. It's one of my favorite hacks, something simple but powerful that keeps you anchored when life gets busy. And since we're shining a light on women this month, let's celebrate the strength, faith, and stories of women who inspire us every day. And for the men listening, think about how you're uplifting the women of faith in your life. Join me and over 20 million believers who have found encouragement through Glorify. Download the app today at glorify-app.com/podcast, and let's keep walking in faith together. Again, that's glorify-app.com/podcast.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
One thing that I've really learned this week is that no matter how much you think you might understand, you definitely don't. And if you guys are following along in the guidebook, I had 3 main factors listed for what it really takes to understand something. And the first thing is comprehension. Comprehension is your ability to gain knowledge and interpret meaning. And this is where I think like the idea of learning comes in. Learning is the process in which we gather information, eventually to apply it. And I think when you start to apply it, then that's when you really understand it. But number 1 is comprehension. Like you got to use your noggin. You got to try to like gain knowledge and interpret meaning for this thing that's happening around you or this concept. The second factor that's important to understand is insight. This is your ability to articulate and interpret that information and go deeper with it. Because without making, like you can like force feed yourself information and facts and research and talking to friends and all this stuff all day long. But then until you like go deeper in your brain and try to apply that knowledge and try to make sense of it all, it's just going to like kind of like float there in your brain. And then the third factor here to really understand something is empathy. And this is an emotional response to the impact that this concept has on another person or even you. This whole episode has been very introspective. And so let's take empathy from like a me perspective or like a you perspective. Like, how can you be almost empathetic towards yourself? I was on the phone with a friend the other day, and like I this has been a huge piece of my trying to interpret meaning for the things that are happening around me is phoning friends, because I've spent so much time in my own brain. I'm like, I got to get some other ideas in here because I'm just spinning my wheels on things that I've made up in my head. And so I was talking to a friend this past week, and he was like, you got to just like step back and give yourself a little bit of grace. Like, yeah, you've gone through similar things before, but you've never done this piece of your story yet. You haven't written this piece of your story yet. And it's not going to make sense now. It'll make sense later, but you're never going to get to like relive this feeling right now. Good, bad, in between, you're never going to get to be here again. I don't know if this friend listens to the podcast. I should probably ask him, but you know who you are, and I love you, dude. But I think sometimes God will put people in our lives to help us understand him and understand the world around us. This is one of those people for me. And he just did a great job of being like, you're too busy to actually stop and understand the clean slate that you have. He told me that I haven't even really tried to see the opportunity before me. And that kind of started to like create new connections in my brain. And then he took it one step further and he said, you keep asking for the answers, but you haven't spent time trying to understand them or even how to get there. It's kind of like when you're, I was never really a good math student, which sidebar, I'm doing stellar. You guys, I'm doing absolutely stellar in my statistics class. And I just had to say that because I was literally in remedial math in my senior year of high school. And now I'm like passing statistics with a 94, knock on wood, please send up prayers so that continues. But like, that's crazy. Anyway, if you don't stop and try to understand something, it's a lot like looking over at the other kid's desk in math class and copying the answers, not listening to the teacher, not even bothering to open your textbook, not looking at what's on the board. It's like just copying the answers from questions 1, 2, and 3 onto your paper. And then when it comes time to show your work, you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that was even going to come up. I didn't even try to understand. I was just trying to breeze by and kind of skate through and pretend like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't actually stop to interpret the situation, the problem, the set of numbers that's in front of me. I didn't even try. Maybe it's because I didn't care. Maybe I didn't want to get invested. Maybe I just didn't think that it would be important later on. Whatever scenario you might find yourself in for just wanting to copy the answers from somebody else. Like, that's cool and that's nice in the moment. It might get you to the next step, but then when it comes time to go deeper and really interpret the answer, but when it comes time to go deeper and really interpret what the heck is going on, you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know how you got there. You're not going to really, truly understand. Proverbs 3:5. Proverbs is such a great book. It's a wisdom book. The Bible that I have has kind of like a cover page for each book of the Bible. And for Proverbs, and then there are like some subheadings, and it kind of just like gives you a little bit of information. But the setting of Proverbs, it was written primarily by King Solomon during Solomon's wiser days. That's the setting that it says that it's set in. Solomon had great wisdom, but he gave into temptation later on in his life. And I think that that's kind of a really key component to think about. And that could be a whole nother topic of conversation. But Proverbs is a book of wisdom, and it's one of my favorite books of the Bible. And my cover page here has two more things at the bottom. One of them is verses to remember, and the other one is a theme to consider. The theme to consider is that true wisdom comes from God. And the verse to remember is the verse that I actually have listed here in the guidebook, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him and he will make your path straight. I feel like that one is, if you've spent any bit of time in church, you probably have heard this: lean not on your own understanding. I could sit here all day and spin my wheels and try to kind of make sense of the stuff that I have going on. I could sit here and give you tips and tricks of how to improve your, strategies for learning and how to kind of just like make sense of the world. I could talk about listening to understand rather than to speak next. Like, I could hit you with all those things, but what's really coming up for me today is just that sometimes you just have to sit back and be like, God, I don't know what you're trying to teach me, but I'm ready to understand when you're ready for it to click for me. Wow. Now I'm crying. I think I'm in a spot where I'm like pushing so hard for understanding, but maybe I'm just not ready yet. Maybe it'll be one of those things that only makes sense in hindsight. Or maybe it'll be one of those things that'll make sense after I listen back to this episode and edit it. I'm going to be like, boom, there it is. Maybe I'll get a text from a friend later and it'll start to connect the dots. I don't know. But I do know that trying to make sense of the world around you and trying to make sense of your reality is the best thing that you can do for yourself when you're riding the ebbs and flows of life, when you're trying to just ride the wave. If you're following along in the guidebook, there are a couple questions at the end under take action, and we can kind of morph these a little bit, but the first question says, do you know best? Take a moment to consider your patterns of understanding. Do you listen to understand? Is knowledge important to you? Do you really care about learning? And apply those to whatever makes sense in your life. Like, do you care about learning in your schoolwork? Like, is that something that's important to you? Do you care about learning when it comes to learning about other people, other people's stories? Are you actually interested in learning about what people have to say and what they're going through? Or is that just not really something that you care about? Like, take inventory. And this is, I think, the most important question. When you learn something about God, or maybe when you learn something about what God wants for you, do you take action? That might be like the most important question in this entire series. Like, when you understand something about God, about his call on your life, on his purpose for us as humans, do you take action? I don't know where this applies in your life this week. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're trying to gain understanding in this week, but I encourage you to just spend some time. Just spend some time. Ask the questions, phone the friends, try to get the answers, try to make sense of whatever the heck is happening in your brain. And if you can't right now, that's okay. You're going to get there eventually. And I'll remind you of what my friend reminded me of the other day, but just be patient. Give yourself some grace. Those are things that I'm trying to work on. And just keep surrounding yourself with people who are going to lift you up and encourage you, because I think sometimes trying to make sense of things, you get in your own head too much, and everything just starts to get overwhelming, and then you're just like spinning on all these ideas, and that's not really helpful either. So anyway, this was kind of a lot, so I hope that you guys like take a second to digest, maybe turn some music on, go for a walk or something. That's probably what I'm gonna do. I love you guys a lot, and I'm really grateful for you. I'm grateful that you keep coming back every single week. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to give it a rating, give it a review. That just helps more people find and listen to the show. Be sure to tune in next week. We are talking about the power of relationships. Oh, how perfect. That's so exciting, because a big key in understanding is the relationships that you have around you. So that'll be a fun one. But I love you guys a lot. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for riding the wave with me. And I will talk to you guys next Thursday.